take a closer look at Coimbra, the new dice drafting and placement game from Eggertspiele. Eurogames featuring dice drafting are right up our alley. Will Coimbra find a spot on our shelf? Stay tuned to find out. In Coimbra, which takes place in Portugal during the Age of Discovery, you are the head of an influential house and are trying to increase your prestige by funding exploration, visiting monasteries, and impressing important citizens. Our thoughts on Coimbra come after 3 plays with 2 players, 1 play with 3 players, and 1 play with 4 players. For a more advanced game, Coimbra comes with a slim set of rules. The game is played over 4 rounds. The main part of your round consists of drafting 3 dice and placing them in 4 possible areas on the board. With the drafted dice, you normally want to buy cards, which will give you steps on one of the 4 influence tracks and immediate bonuses, special abilities during the game, or will be scored at the end of the game. Using a higher numbered dice will most likely allow you to choose a card before your opponents, but at the same time, the number of the dice you use defines the price of the card, which you pay in either coins or shields. The color of the dice, on the other hand, will become important later and will trigger during the income phase near the end of the round. For income, gray dice give you shields, orange gives money, purple gives you the possibility to travel around the map board to visit monasteries for bonuses, green gives you immediate victory points, and white is a joker. The amount of each good or bonus you receive from a die during the income phase is dependent on your position on the corresponding influence track. The game ends after 4 rounds, and quite a number of endgame scoring conditions are evaluated. For example, voyage cards and diploma set collection. Coimbra is surprisingly easy to learn and understand. With a bit of help, you could even teach and play the game with less experienced players. The rulebook is very well written and the iconography is clear and easy to understand. During our first play or two, there were a few cards that we had to look up quickly, but after that there were no further problems with understanding the rules. The production of Coimbra is great. The components are of a high quality, and we especially like the little dice castles. The dice do get small scratches on them when they are put in the castles, but other than that, these castles are a really neat idea. And we hope that they last longer than, for example, the Rockets and Seafarer of Catan. The artwork is colorful, bold, and unique. The game really pops out on the table, and the artwork on the cards is very charming. And finally, the box features a very useful inlay to keep everything well organized. Overall, in terms of quality, Coimbra is a beautiful, well-made game that is a joy to set up and get to the table. Coimbra's gameplay design is really clever and smooth. The lasting effects of your dice drafting, which carry over through each phase of the round, and where both the value and color matter, are really excellent. During the dice drafting phase, you're not just thinking about the next immediate phase where you place your dice to buy cards and get special actions based on the value of the dice, but you're also thinking about the very end of the round, during the income phase, where it's the color of the dice that is evaluated. And then additionally, you have to consider which cards to buy, which will give you special abilities or bonuses and steps on the influence tracks, which will then also influence the income phase. And putting all of this together, which color and number dice to draft, which cards to buy, where to travel on the map board, it's really satisfying and an enjoyable puzzle. It works together so nicely and fits into this great package. And for this smooth gameplay alone, Coimbra can already be highly recommended. But there are some limitations to the system, mostly due to the lack of diversity in the cards. Coimbra comes with 1 set of cards, which will all be available in the game at one point or another. The exact pattern in which they come out is always different, but they do always appear sooner or later. On the one hand, this does lead slowly to some feeling of repetition, because even though the order is always different, it can also mean that you will be able to try to play similar tactics from game to game. But on the other hand, this can also be fun because you can nicely plan ahead and go for a certain strategy that suits you. So while the gameplay works really well together, with the dice drafting fitting in with the card buying and the later income phase being influenced by both decisions, the game can become repetitive after several plays due to the lack of diversity in the cards. We always had a lot of fun with Coimbra and we're always excited to bring it to the table, but now after 5 games, we feel a little saturated. We just don't have that much to discover anymore. We also think that with 3 or 4 players, some tactics are stronger than others. We can't say this definitively at the moment, it would require more plays, but in our 2 plays with 3+ players, one tactic was clearly stronger than others and won the player the game. We really enjoyed the game with 2 players and felt that it was quite open and relatively easy to stick to your plan at this player count. There are the same amount of cards available in the market at all player counts, so with 2 players, there is less competition for the cards. We do have to add here that with 2 and 3 players, you include dice markers on the board, which automatically remove the highest card in that area if your die is not higher than these placeholder dice markers. But with that, you can still likely guess which cards your opponent will go for, and therefore you can determine which cards you can likely buy. With more players, buying cards becomes tighter and more of a fight, and it will be clear that using dice with a higher value will become more important because you can choose cards first in that area if you have the highest value dice. But these cards that you get with a high value dice then become expensive. You pay for the card based on the value of the dice used. Therefore, with more players, resources, the shields and coins, become more valuable because you will often be buying and competing for cards with high value dice. And this of course connects back to the influence tracks, where with more players, climbing up the gray and orange resource tracks was more beneficial, and the purple and green tracks, which yield traveling steps and victory points, were not as strong. So going for a green and purple tactic will be a lot more difficult to carry out with more players because you're often then lacking resources to buy the optimal cards. Through this, the possible tactics, and with that the replayability, is reduced when playing Coimbra with more players. So in the end, if you are a fan of complex, intricate expert games and want to replay a game over and over again to figure out all tactics and possible strategies, Coimbra should not be your first pick, especially if you already have more than one dice drafting game on your shelf. But still, Coimbra's design is incredibly slick. The gameplay is a lot of fun, and we definitely will be keeping it in our collection, and we'll be happy to pull it out again. We believe and hope that there will be some expansions in the future. If you're looking for a mid-weight, beautifully designed dice drafting Euro game, and you don't mind that there are not dozens of different tactics to follow up on, Coimbra is definitely worth checking out.
Thank you for watching Games Up. See you next time.